Welcome to Paradise City, a place with a feeling, a town with a calling, and a gathering of our most blissful experiences, where we explore the question, what's your paradise? I'm Sylvia, and today I'm joined by Nick Paz, a surf photographer and oceanography student based out of Concord, California, and Michelle Perez, an environmental educator based out of Berkeley, California. They are members of the Latinx Surf Club that strives to create an inclusive space across surfing communities. So what happens when you catch the water bug like Nick and Michelle? If you've seen any surfing movie, clips on YouTube, or have listened to surf rock, you're spot on if you guess it's going to be this euphoric experience where you're shredding, turning, flipping. Shocker, I don't know the lingo, but in summary, yeah, you're doing all kinds of crazy, cool things. You'd also be correct to guess it's a risky, injury-ridden activity where the elements, marine life, or even just a fellow human on a board could wipe you out. So you might be asking, and I definitely asked this to both Nick and Michelle, why paddle out there to face that? From what they both share, and you listening, you can relate. When you love something in a healthy way that promotes a better you, you'll do what it takes to keep that experience, to keep that thing in your life. On this episode, Paradise is bracing the brakes.
For me, it can be me surfing alone at a more remote spot, or it can be with a bunch of close friends just enjoying out a day in the waves. Ideally, like, my favorite weather would be like foggy. Usually have to put on a little less sunscreen. It's kind of nice. There's usually a little bit less people out. There's no wind, clean conditions, like somewhere in like waves that are like probably like 4 to 6 feet high and just super clean and fun.
I serve the same spot. Normally it's the closest, and I really like the lineup, like we're all like the people around there. Normally check the surf, meet up with whoever I'm meeting up with, brave the foggy and potentially really cold temperature. So we would wear pretty thick suits even through the summertime. And so getting that on, getting my board off, out of the car, and just kind of getting ready, checking which break we want to paddle out at. We surf on a beach break, so the beach break is like there's like multiple peaks. It's not just like one spot. So normally picking where we're gonna go and then paddling out. I met up with a friend of mine who I met through Nick, actually. Yeah, she is another woman of color, so it's really fun to like hang out with other women in the water. It was nice and calm in the water, which is a little rare for the area over here, with a lot of heavy fog. As we paddled out, there weren't a lot of people there, but everyone was like super stoked. So everyone was like smiling, and it's a good way to start your morning, just waving at everyone. And I actually saw this guy I've been seeing a lot in the morning, and he was like, oh hey, like recognized me, and he just kind of gave me a wave, and I was like, hey. And we ended up talking about traffic. Yeah, it was a nice, beautiful morning. It was really calm, it was really small, and those were my favorite waves. So it was really nice to be out there just kind of like cheering other people on. And then the sun peeked out, which was really beautiful, which is very typical in the Bay Area.
My dad is a big scuba diver and kind of grew up in the Miami Keys, just diving the Keys. So naturally he passed that on to me, and we went diving a few times, snorkeling and diving. I naturally had this love of the water growing up, so I didn't honestly expect to start stand-up surfing, but I guess I watched a bunch of movies like Surf's Up, Point Break, and that kind of inceptioned me into starting when I was like 14, and the bug immediately bit. So it was like I was in Mexico on vacation and stood up on my first wave, and it was kind of all downhill from there. It's more of a generational thing is what I'm getting at. You don't have to have it, but it plays a big part when you have someone in your family who does it as well as pass it on to you.
What advice would you give to someone that's brand new? You were once them, just enjoying your time in the water, and then one day you get on a board and the rest is history.
I think it's hugely important to have a mentor. Surfing is very generational, it's very tribal. And if you don't have a group, or at least a pair of people to go out with consistently, it can be very difficult, because people out there are not exactly the friendliest, I would say, to the average person. Like, most people would just kind of look at you if you're struggling and not really say or do anything. But if you have a couple friends going in, it makes all the difference. I would suggest like looking up clubs or looking at organizations like Latinx Surf Club, or City Surf up here is a very good organization. Just any way you can network and find people of similar skill level as well as people of a higher skill level that will teach you and help you out, because they do exist. It's just kind of hard to find them if you just go out any random day in the water. So that would be my number one piece of advice: is go find a community, go find a mentor, also as well as people of similar skill level, and go out consistently.
What new things have you learned since you first started that have hit home for you? Maybe something you never thought you'd learn about yourself or surfing when you first started out.
I've learned to appreciate the community that exists in the water. I mean, even though I had my dad kind of get me into the water in the first place, it wasn't through surfing, and I didn't really know too many people who surfed in the area. I would kind of mostly just surf alone and be solely motivated by my own desire and not be pushed by anyone else when I first started. So this last year, like ever since I started photographing people, I've really learned to appreciate the community in the lineup and know people, and it's gotten to a point where the ocean kind of feels like my backyard, which is extremely helpful, and it makes this experience so much better. That's one thing. Skills I've picked up, I don't know, just being able to be comfortable in bigger waves, be comfortable competing, more comfortable approaching people, and it's definitely giving me some confidence just being out there in the water with a bunch of friends who will push me into stuff. It's pretty nice. Since the past year, just because of COVID, I've been going into the water a lot more and been seeing a lot of the same faces as like the last time I went out. So it's definitely taken more of a front seat in my life.
I'm curious to hear more about this surf photography, because I'm sure like other sports photography, it's fast-paced, no two frames are the same, but I'm sure it's an additional way to appreciate surfing.
As far as surf photographers go, I would say Sachi Cunningham. I've been seeing her photos since I was a kid, and she inspired me to go out to surf and photograph big waves. Surf photography is quite a niche skill to have. It's very challenging. It's not like a lot of other sports photography. Like I said, if you have this one moment where you have to capture it, because no two waves are the same at all. The surfer is not going to do the exact same thing every single time. So it's really hard to kind of capture that moment, capture that pinpoint moment of action. It's a lot of fun. It's like I said, it's very challenging for me, but it also pushes me, which I appreciate. But it's been a long journey, but it's been a lot of fun, like just learning the ins and outs. Like a source of inspiration is hugely important, and having some reference to what you're trying to capture, that's been a huge help. It's a workout, especially if you're shooting in the water. So a lot of swimming, especially around here. You're gonna have a lot of current at Ocean Beach, a lot of big waves. It takes a lot of mental fortitude and a lot of awareness to be out there. As far as surfers go, I would say there's quite a few, but a lot of the people from the Van Surf team, like Dylan Graves, the Gadauskas brothers, they're just out there spreading positivity and really spreading what we call stoke. So the excitement, the exhilaration, and sense of community in the water is what they're known for, and they're really good at that. And a lot of professionals don't do that, which I really appreciate for them. Another one, I would say John Florence, just because he's an absolute animal in the water. Pure waterman, like he does everything in the water. And we also shared a knee injury at about the same time. So watching his recovery and being able to compete in the Olympics for him was like hugely inspirational for me, and has pushed me to perform and do a lot more and be a lot more confident with my body again.
We're all familiar with the dangers of the ocean. Anything can happen out there. What has happened out there to you, and why do you continue to do this after up to this point, you've clearly survived?
There's been a few, especially up here in Ocean Beach, San Francisco, are most of my most harrowing surf experiences. Definitely respect your limits. Definitely been out in waves that I shouldn't have been out on, and I paid the price by getting washed up on shore. I've been to rocks before. I've bounced off the sandbar. I've been held down. So I would say 3 or 4 years ago, I surfed 11-foot waves at Ocean Beach, and I got held down like twice by this large set. I got held underwater for a little bit, and I was kind of on the wrong set of equipment. Definitely taught me a lesson that day. There's another time I was surfing hurricane swell in Florida on the East Coast, and that was another 9-foot plus day. That was a lot of fun. Like I caught like 2 waves, and like that's it for me. I'm done. That's all. I got my fill and decided to go back to the beach after that. For days like that where I'm like really pushing myself, it's kind of its own reward where I'm not really doing it for money. I'm not sponsored or anything. It's just like the experience on the water, the rush of riding that wave or surviving that paddle out, or just for my own personal athletic growth. It's like an athletic achievement as well as kind of a mental strength achievement for me as well, because it takes a lot of mental strength to persevere in those conditions. You have to be really on top of your game. You have to be in pretty good physical condition as well. So it's kind of you versus the elements out there, and it's very rewarding when you surpass your own limits and achieve that in those conditions.
Yeah, so I wear a helmet now, which is like very out there, you know, like people stare at me, they'll just like they watch me like paddle in, and I just wave, you know, with my helmet. Yeah, I like to longboard, so I have a bunch of boards, but I've been hit by 2 boards, so I've had 2 different concussions. Not to freak anyone out, but I had a TBI before, so I had a traumatic brain injury 3 or 4 years ago. So I was like snowboarding, and I was having way too much fun, and I like hit my head. Anyways, so I recovered from that, which was like a lot of work, but I didn't know that basically after you have a TBI or a really bad concussion, they're like really easy to get, like super easy, and they just get worse and worse, and it's like harder and longer to recover from them. I got my first concussion like a year ago or something from surfing, or my second, sorry, but like my first in surfing. And then the second one in winter, and during the winter swell when the big waves came in, because it gets really big here. And someone got in my way. They like were on the wave that I was already on, and they didn't get off. And so like I bailed, and then the board came up around and like hit me in the head. And I like kept surfing for like an hour. I was like, whoa, I feel kind of weird. I feel like those probably are the scariest like situations I've been in, like getting hurt. Again, with like COVID, I surfed before the pandemic, and so not a lot, but I surfed enough to be able to notice that like the crowds had like tripled. I feel like that's a little dangerous because there's just so many people. It's like populated everywhere, and there's only like so many waves that you can be in, like little pockets. I think if you know what you're doing, it's easy to like be the person to like facilitate the safe choices, like, you know, not going into the places where the new people are or dodging around them, which is hard. I learned how to do turns because it got really crowded. I mean, the other reality is like there are sharks. You know, we had a surfer who super experienced, had been surfing his whole life. I think got bit by a shark here in Santa Cruz and passed away. And then we got like someone else got bit by a shark like a month ago, you know, like 10 miles from the beach we surf at. There are great whites in the water, and I think about that a lot. So I also have like a back thing I'm dealing with right now, and so I'm trying to take care of myself in that way of like, if I take care of my body, you know, I can prolong surfing and like not get hurt and hurt other people. So wearing a helmet is great. I feel really safe, where I look like, you know, kind of funny out there and I stand out, but I've had people like compliment me and they're like, wow, that's such a good idea. Like I should wear a helmet because I don't want to get hit by someone. And I'm like, yeah, dude, it's like real. Like you could get really hurt. And assessing situations, I think I do that way more now, actually, that I've been, you know, I'll look at a wave and I'll be like, I'm not going to take that. Even if it's a great wave, I'll be like, because there's like 20 people in front of you, or there's like you're not sure if you're gonna make it, and it's just like, I don't really like play those games anymore. I'm like, no, I'm gonna assess the situation to the best I can. Obviously, I can't really actually, predict the ocean. No one can. But to the best of the knowledge you have of patterns that you notice in the water.
What's your process to not psych yourself out, even though you're very much aware of the risk every time?
With sharks and just like other things, other sea critters in the ocean and things like that. I live in the Bay Area, and the traffic here is like, like LA. It's like crowded, there's cars everywhere. And I'm more likely, in my opinion, to die in my car than I am in the ocean. When I got my injury with snowboarding, I was like, I'm never snowboarding again. I've never been on a snowboard ever since then. I was like, whatever, I don't care about this. But like with surfing, it's different. It's like, I caught the bug, I'm in love, and I'm like, I will do everything I possibly can to do it for the rest of my life. And that means like figuring out how to do it in the safest way for the longest amount of time possible.
If at this point you're inspired by the fact that there are a growing number of communities of color focused surfing organizations and social media groups, here are some to check out. Up first, join and follow the Latinx Surf Club on Instagram and Facebook. You can find them at Latinx Surf Club. There's Brown Girl Surf, an organization committed to creating a surf culture where all people feel welcome, included, and empowered, whether that's holding community surf events, advocating for environmental policies, or fighting for equitable beach access. You can find more information at browngirlsurf.com. There is City Surf Project. Their mission is to ensure Bay Area youth have equitable access to the ocean through surf instruction and have connected over 2,000 youth to the ocean. Find more information and learn how to support at citysurfproject.com. Queer Surf is equipping queers, women, GNC, trans, lesbian, gay, non-binary people with tools and knowledge to safely enjoy the ocean. Find more information at queersurf.org. And now, back to the episode. I'm sure it's a medley of people, but could you give us an idea of who you've met, who you've crossed paths with while out on the water?
So I'm pretty fortunate in that I live in a very diverse area where you get a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life. It's a lot of BIPOC, a lot of LGBTQ plus surfers as well. So it's a very diverse lineup up here. The more I engage with different communities up here and different organizations, the more I see that. It varies from beach to beach. If you go down to like Santa Cruz or Ocean Beach, there's gonna be a lot of white dudes on like high performance shortboards, just trying to show off and just do a bunch of stuff. But for the most part, you're gonna see a lot of different faces out in the water. You're gonna meet a lot of interesting people. That's what I find pretty cool is like you can talk to anyone in the lineup, and they might be an artist, a fellow creative-minded person. They might be a lawyer. They might be a EMT. Really cool thing for me at least when I'm out there, if I'm surfing or photographing big waves, a lot of these guys aren't pros. They're just average, I guess if you call them average, guys just going out there for the pure experience. Soul surfers, I guess, if you will.
Would you consider yourself a soul surfer?
Probably not. I like competing. I actually just started competing this summer, so that's been kind of a goal of mine, like ever since I tore my ACL and started coming back. Like that's been a dream of mine since I was a kid. It's been a fun journey just getting back in there, but I do enjoy the rewards of competition.
COVID basically made it almost illegal to surf because you weren't supposed to like leave your house. You weren't supposed to go to a different county. And I mean, there's like very specific people that live by the beach and can afford to live by the beach. That didn't allow for a lot of people to be able to like technically go to the ocean and be able to be there. And I know in places like San Diego, it's like you would get arrested or you would get a ticket or something. And that's kind of how I was up here at that specific beach I'm talking about. That allowed a lot of people to not be in the water. So I was really lucky that I lived in North Bay, like during the pandemic. And it's kind of weird. I lived in a national park And so I ended up essentially surfing every day with a roommate, two of my roommates at the time. While I was there, it was like super interesting, but I got a lot of surfing in. And then, fast forwarding to what you're talking about is it's changed so much in the time that I've like moved to go to this beach now in San Francisco, and at the beginning of COVID, and it's just fluctuated. There's been, I think, a lot of things that have brought surfing at the top. So like now that it's in the Olympics, like it has a lot more interest, and people have like looked at it and seen it, and it's like an attainable like sport or activity or hobby that you can do now. I think it completely changes all the time. And between surfing in Santa Cruz and surfing in North Bay and now surfing in San Francisco, I'd say surfing in San Francisco is probably the most diverse place that I have personally experienced. Like, it's got the most women I've noticed. It's got the most women of color. It's got like all types of different like people from different ages. It's got people from like all different kinds of work, like I meet artists out there, professional skaters, like people in tech, educators. Yeah, it's also just like a massive break compared to the other ones I've described. So I feel like that allows for a lot more people with a lot more like different skill level to be there as well. Yeah, there's just like all types of people I would never normally be friends with or like I think associate with, and they're all surfers. And so for the longest time, I didn't even know, like, Nick without a wetsuit. Like, I saw him in real clothes, and I was like, whoa, that's weird. That's how a lot of my friendships are, and it's pretty cool. But I don't know, when I think of, like, a typical surfer, it's, like, an image I used to paint, before I started surfing, and now it's, like, I can't even tell you what it is, because San Francisco, I think, has, for sure, one of the most diverse lineups I've ever been a part of.
You ask someone on the street, what does the average surfer look like? I'm sure we'd all be on a similar wavelength, and we'll picture a blonde, long-haired Matthew McConaughey-esque dude. So it's nice to hear there's a diverse range of people, and hopefully what you and Nick see at the beaches you frequent spreads to other communities where current and future generations of BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color can see themselves.
When I think about probably like top surfers, like in the like locally, like definitely meeting that standard of like white male dominated and like white woman dominated. But I think that there's a lot of organizations that are doing really cool work, but there's also just like social media, and there's more exposure, I think, to things like surfing and more resources. And there's like people are constantly getting people out. And I think that's allowing for like younger kids to be able to start like earlier. And I think even when you get into the sport though, it's like, I mean, we can go on a huge tangent about like how expensive it is and how inequitable it is, and how like I've been so lucky to like have opportunities like the Latinx Club. Like meeting that group of people and meeting Vanessa was just like it's like changed my life in the sense of like I can surf anywhere and have someone to paddle out with, and I've had cool opportunities to do stuff that I would never have done, I think, like on my own, and just hooking it up with like connecting me with people to get a different board to like help my ability in surfing change that I could never afford, like full priced nice like board, no way, things like that is just like, so it makes it so difficult. So it's not even just the standard of like, or it's not just a step of getting into surfing and being like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and there's other people that look like me and that makes me feel comfortable. It's that plus like your mind and yourself and the lack of ability, because it's really a steep curve of learning. And then on top of that, then it's like, okay, now I have all the gear I need, and I spent a lot of money getting all of that. And then you get to a certain level, and then you have to like level up, and it's like more of an investment. So I think there's like multiple barriers that are not talked about often. And I think learning as an adult too has been really hard for me, because I didn't grow up anywhere near the ocean. I saw the ocean when I was 14 for the first time. I grew up about an hour and a half from here between Stockton and Lodi. So I'm from the Central Valley. My mom, she's a single mom, and so we didn't go on vacations, we didn't like go to the ocean as a family. Like my mom was working multiple jobs. So there wasn't like time for me to to get exposure to the ocean or to get exposure to hobbies like that. So my family is kind of just like, what are you doing in the water? There's sharks. It's like what you were saying, like it's just so much to surfing. It's dependent. Like we can put a bunch of people on posters that are surfing that look like this, and that's just the beginning of like what that standard should be, and what everything else underneath comes from. Like, how do we support these people to continue their journey and to learn the right etiquette, right? That's like etiquette in the water that people don't know unless they're like surfing with someone who does know, or getting lessons, which cost money and things like that.
Just going back to that moment as a 14-year-old when you saw the ocean for the first time, what was that like?
Wow, I remember that day like it was yesterday. My best friend I've known him for like, I don't know, 15 years or something, but it was like a bunch of us. We were really into like shows, like concerts and stuff, and so we wanted to go see this band. We were like, yeah, okay, cool, like let's do it. It's okay, someone's gonna rent a hotel and we're all gonna stuff in there, like 12 people are gonna like stuff into this tiny little hotel in Santa Cruz. It's totally not legal, like it was booked for like a person or two. So we were like, yeah, let's go. So we stuff a bunch of people in the car, we drive. It's about 2 hours from where I live. As we're in the car, I'm like, oh yeah, I've never seen the ocean. And they're like, wait, what? And like everyone in the car is like freaking out. They're like, no way, like, oh my, you're lying. And I'm like, no, dude, like I've never seen the ocean. Like, when would I have seen it? I'm 14, I don't have a license. Like I don't, and they're like, okay. And they're like, okay, we have to go. Like that's the first thing we have to do. Mind you, it was like, 10 p.m. on a Saturday or something, or Friday. And we were like driving in to go to sleep and then go to the show next day. So there's not like anything spectacular. It's like dark, the lights on the pier are on. I'm eating Cheez-Its. I'm like shoving Cheez-Its in my mouth. And we get there and they're like, okay, we're here. And I like open the door and I just run out. The Cheez-Its are like flying everywhere and I'm like running out. I'm like super stoked. Oh my God, the ocean. And I started crying. I was just like bawling. I was like, whoa, like the land just ends. Like everyone was silent because like I think everyone recognized that like I wasn't like a kid. Like I was, but like I wasn't like a baby that was like saying it for the first time and not really like articulating how I'm feeling. But at 14 I was just crying and I couldn't help it. And yeah, I was just like bawling and like crying all over my Cheez-Its. And like sometimes my best friend will bring that up. He's like, isn't it crazy how you're a surfer now and like you're in the water all the time and you don't even think about it? Like it's like walking now and you had never seen the ocean. He was there for that moment and he's been there, after. And it's just like, wow, that's so wild. So yeah, thank you for like bringing that up. I like totally forget that it's such a wild thought.
Do you still feel those strong emotions when you go out there?
All the time. I mean, it's so funny that I'm very well known in the water as like a hype woman because I get so stoked. I'm like, wow, and there's days that I'm like, why am I being so ungrateful? But every day is a good day in the water. Every day that I don't get hurt, every day that no one gets hurt, and every day we get like a wave. And I think sometimes like I definitely forget that. I mean, I cried in the water like not that long ago. I like paddled out and it was like such a beautiful day and I was like, wow, I'm so grateful to be here. And I started crying and I was like, oh my God, what's this water coming out of my eyes? I've been learning a lot about my family and yeah, I don't have too much information on my family, but I have some ancestry in Cancun and in Guatemala. That's where like my whole family is from. And I think that like someone in my line at some point was like an ocean lover and it got passed down to me. And I feel so connected in the water. And I'm always like, how are we so privileged to be able to do this? Like, that's what I always think when I paddle out. I'm like, oh my God, like we're in the ocean. Like, this is so cool. And I don't even think about, I used to really get obsessed with like, okay, I gotta like work on this while I'm surfing, like technical stuff. Like I gotta learn how to like cross step, or I have to like learn how to do a bottom turn. And honestly, the past like 2, maybe 3 months, there's a lot of layers as to that for that. But the past 2 or 3 months, I've just been like, wow, I get to surf today. Like I get to be in the water. Wow, there's sun on my face. Like I feel better. I feel whole. I feel like, people wake up and have their morning coffee, or people wake up and go on their morning run, or read a book, and that's how I feel after I surf. It's like it's just a part of my routine. It's a part of my life, and it's like sometimes I'm like, oh, I did something fancy on the board, that was cool. But it's not about that anymore. But I think you go through phases as a surfer. I don't think you're like a solid like soul surfer or like competition person. Like I think you go through phases, and I'm pretty new, so I think that I get overwhelmed with just the idea of surfing. I don't know if it changes. Like, I don't know if, you talk to me 10 years from now and I'll be like, yeah, surfing's like whatever.
What's your paradise? After reflecting on how this whole surfing journey has gone for you, through the pain of your past injuries and lessons learned from them, to the just good vibes you have after a day out enjoying the waves, what does that feel and look like for you?
I think surfing definitely is a big part of my life, and like something I hope to do for the rest of my life. But I think it's just a part of it. It's not like my whole life. Like, there's just so many things I want to do in the world, and surfing, friends, like a good community. My paradise would be like living by the coast somewhere on a farm with a bunch of my friends, like gardening, eating really good food, surfing every day, having good health, having a lot of like love around me, and not worrying about bills and all these other things. Being comfortable basically, but having a piece of land on the coast and like goats and friends and waves. But yeah, my paradise would be to like be there and live like a simple life, and mainly like grow my own food, like connecting with the land and the ocean.
Perfect waves with my friends out in the water, just enjoying the community, enjoying the water, and experiencing nature collectively. The act of riding a wave is so zen-like and artistic, and it's basically, if you have this long wave in front of you, it's almost like a canvas. It's very artistic. It's an artistic pursuit at its core. At a certain level, you're pretty much free to draw whatever lines you want on this wave, and the feeling is very euphoric. Enjoying that with a bunch of my close friends and some nice weather, maybe sharing a few beers on the beach afterwards, is kind of my ideal experience.
I hope you learned as much as I did about what an inclusive and supportive surfing culture is like. And it's exciting to know that no matter if you surf competitively, on the daily as part of your routine, or for the sheer love of it, the unbiased waves are there, patiently waiting for you to come on in when the water's fine, to give you the same level playing field as everyone else. From there, you just choose your wave and you see what you can do. Thank you to Nick and Michelle for joining me. You can follow them on Instagram at The Salty Paz. That's The Salty, P-A-Z, Paz. And at Mujer Michelle. That's Mujer, M-U-J-E-R, Michelle, both on Instagram. Follow Paradise City on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and support us on Patreon at Paradise City Pod. And of course, give us a like and a follow wherever you're listening to this episode so you get an alert when the next episode is live. Wherever you are in the world, it doesn't matter if you're landlocked or you're actually at the beach right now listening to this, consider taking a surfing lesson at some point in your life. If you let it go sometime back, hey, this is the year to pick it back up. Support organizations creating inclusive spaces. Yes, even those based in the water. No industry or geographic area is excluded from that vision. And share this episode with someone that should too. I'm Sylvia, and this has been Paradise City. Thank you for listening. Till next time.